kingdom forgotten by time, there stood a castle veiled in mist and ivy, its towering spires looming like the crooked fingers of a long-buried giant. This was Valoria, a once prosperous realm now steeped in mystery. Its king was a sorrowful man, haunted not by the weight of his crown, but by the curse that plagued his 12 daughters, the 12 princesses of Valoria. Each princess was as beautiful as the next, golden-haired, raven-haired, fair-skinned, dark-eyed. But their beauty was tainted by something inexplicable. Every night, without fail, the princesses would awaken with their silk slippers torn to shreds. It was as if they had been dancing for hours, yet no one ever saw them leave their chambers. And every morning, their pale faces, gaunt and hollow, seemed more exhausted than the day before. The king, in his desperation, issued a decree. Any man who could uncover the mystery of the princess's tattered shoes will be rewarded with riches beyond his wildest dreams. But there was a darker side to the offer. If he failed, he would forfeit his life. Many had tried, soldiers, scholars, and noblemen alike, but none returned to tell of their fate. The castle seemed to swallow them whole. Among the many who came was Thorn, a young soldier with a shadowed past. He had fought in countless battles, his once honorable name stained by rumors of desertion. Thorn's life had become a relentless pursuit of redemption, and he saw the king's challenge as his final chance to reclaim his honor. He had lost everything: his family, his land, his dignity, and all that remained was a burning need for glory. When Thorn arrived at the castle, he was struck by the weight of its stillness. The ivy-covered walls seemed to whisper warnings, and the cold, damp air clung to his skin like death itself. The princesses greeted him with hollow smiles, their eyes empty, as though they had long since given up hope of being saved. Something was deeply wrong in this place, but Thorn, driven by his need to prove himself, ignored the creeping unease that gnawed at him. That evening, the king met with Thorn privately. His once regal face had become gaunt, his eyes dark with sleeplessness. "Many men have come before you," the king began, his voice a low rasp. "None have succeeded. My daughters, there is something unnatural about their affliction." Thorn nodded, his jaw set in determination. "I will uncover the truth, Your Majesty." The king leaned in, his expression grim. "Beware, soldier. This curse is not merely one of the body, it will consume the mind, the soul. Those who have entered the princess's chambers have been lost, not to death, but to something far worse." Thorn did not flinch. He had faced death many times before, but what he feared most was failing yet again. He would succeed where others had not. That night, Thorn was stationed outside the princess's chamber, seated in a chair beside the grand door. As the moon rose, casting pale light through the high windows, a thick fog rolled in through the castle's halls. The torches flickered, and the air grew unnaturally cold. Midnight came, and with it, a wave of drowsiness heavier than any fatigue Thorn had ever known. His eyes fluttered shut, and despite his efforts to stay awake, he drifted into an unnatural sleep. When he awoke, dawn had broken. He rushed into the princess's chamber to find them sleeping soundly in their beds, but their slippers, shredded once again. He had failed. As Thorn wandered the castle grounds, contemplating his next move, a strange figure approached him. It was an old woman, hunched beneath a tattered cloak, her eyes gleaming unnaturally. She spoke in a voice that was both soothing and unnerving. You seek to uncover the truth, do you not? Thorn studied her warily. I do. The woman nodded slowly, her lips curling into a thin smile. Then take this. She handed him a small vial of liquid. Drink it at midnight, and it will keep you awake. But beware, it will also reveal that which you may not wish to see. Thorn hesitated but took the vial. He had nothing to lose. The next night, as the clock struck 12, Thorn drank the potion. His mind stayed sharp, his senses heightened, and when the princesses stirred from their beds, he was ready. He watched with bated breath as the eldest, Amara, approached a large mirror at the end of the room. She whispered something inaudible, and the glass rippled like water. Without hesitation, each princess stepped through, vanishing into the mirror. Heart-pounding, Thorn followed. On the other side, he found himself in a grand ballroom, unlike any he had ever seen. The air was thick with the scent of roses, black, wilting roses, and the floor was polished obsidian, reflecting the flickering light of hundreds of candles. The princesses were there, dressed in gowns of deep crimson and shadowy black, their feet moving in perfect synchronization to a music Thorn could not hear. But there was something wrong, something grotesque about their movements. Their faces were blank, their eyes wide but unseeing, as though they were being controlled by an unseen force. As Thorn ventured deeper into the ballroom, he noticed figures cloaked in shadow, dancing with the princesses. These figures had no faces, no bodies, just wisps of darkness that swirled around the princesses like a storm. Then he saw them, the men who had come before him. Their forms were half merged into the ballroom's stone walls, their faces twisted in eternal agony. Some reached out to him, their hands frozen in desperate gestures, their mouths open in silent screams. Thorn's heart raced as the faceless figures began to close in. He turned to flee, but the ballroom seemed to stretch infinitely. The mirror was gone, replaced by a dark expanse that led nowhere. The whispers of the trapped souls grew louder, suffocating him. His breath came in ragged gasps as he tried to fight the pull of the cursed ballroom. Suddenly, Amara appeared before him, her eyes finally focused, her expression pained. "Help us," she whispered, her voice trembling. "We've been cursed for our sins, our vanity, our greed. It led us here. But there is no escape." Thorn felt a chill crawl up his spine. "How do I break the curse?" Amara's gaze fell to the floor. "There is no breaking it. We are doomed to dance for eternity. But you can leave. You can escape." Thorn didn't understand. "How?" Amara's eyes filled with sorrow. "You can't. You are part of this now. You followed us." Just as she spoke, the floor beneath them began to crack. The obsidian surface split open, revealing a dark chasm beneath. The faceless figures swirled around them, their forms becoming more tangible, more monstrous. Thorn stumbled backward, his feet moving of their own accord. His body began to sway in rhythm to the cursed dance, his limbs pulled by invisible strings. "No," he whispered, but it was too late. As the ground gave way, Thorn fell through the darkness, through the cracks of time and space, until he awoke in his own body, lying in the princess's chamber. The dawn light streamed through the windows. But something was wrong. He tried to move, but his body felt heavy, as though it no longer belonged to him. He looked down at his feet. His shoes were in tatters, worn from dancing all night. The realization hit him like a dagger to the heart. He had uncovered the truth, but in doing so, he had become part of the curse. Every night, he would rise and dance alongside the princesses, bound to the cursed ballroom for eternity. The king would never know the fate of his daughters, or the men who came to save them. They were all lost, trapped in an endless, silent dance of torment. And now Thorn was one of them. Thank you for joining us in the world of Twilight Fables. If you enjoyed this tale and want to hear more stories like this, please subscribe and hit the notification bell for more.